I'd like to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the lands I'm speaking to you from today, and acknowledge traditional custodians across the lands everybody is joining us from today as well. I'd like to pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to be talking with Amy Molloy from the Space podcast, who are winners of this year's Mental Health Matters Media and the Arts Award. Welcome, Amy. Congratulations.
Thank you. We are so excited to have won the award. There was much text messages going around and celebrations when we heard. We were absolutely pumped, so thank you.
Oh, fantastic to hear, and well deserved. And so you won for the Space podcast. Can you tell us a bit about what the podcast is and what inspired you to create it?
Sure. So the Space is a mindfulness podcast that's not like the others. That's our strapline. So it comes out twice a day, in the morning and the evening. It's 3 to 5 minute episodes. And it delivers really easy to accessible, simple, real talk, no BS mindfulness tips to kind of really get you going for the day or to wind you down in the evening. So I was very lucky actually that Nova Entertainment, who produces the show, came to me looking for a writer for the show. So I've written about 560 episodes of the Space now. So they came to me and they wanted someone who was deep in the mindfulness world, deep into meditation, deep into mental health awareness, but could really do so in a way that was accessible and simple and entertaining, which is a really hard balance to get right. And can deep dive into those matters that really cause us emotional anguish and turmoil, but do it in a way that makes people want to tune in and not see it as, just another thing they've got on their to-do list with everything else they have to do in their day. So yeah, we came together and produced a show, which is hosted by the beautiful voice of Casey Donovan, who really takes my words and just makes them sound like magic. And yeah, we were just blown away. We came out in the midst of COVID, which was impeccable timing because obviously everybody needs a little bit of a helping hand right now. And we cracked 1 million downloads within 8 months, and it's just kept going and going since then. So yeah, so we were so happy when you guys recognized it for the work we do, because we really do pour so much of our hearts into producing it.
And you said, what was it, 560 episodes that you've written so far. What have been for you some of the more memorable topics that have been covered?
Oh, we've covered so much. I think for me, I really like I like the big topics, that we talk about mental health in the workplace, and we talk about, PTSD and panic attacks and the really kind of the heavy stuff. But we also get really honest about like the small things that can really make us spiral in our day. When you put the wrong exclamation mark on an email to your boss, and how that's such a tiny thing, but we've all felt that when you wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning, you think, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that in a meeting. And how all these small things that happen every day and every hour can really take a toll on our emotional health. And it's important for us to really get honest about the stuff that's stressing us out, and find the tools to overcome them in that moment, and to forgive ourselves and to accept what's happening, and to move forward rather than getting stuck in that moment. So I love when we talk about mindful sex and how we're running through a to-do list in our head instead of connecting with our partners. We talk about email apnea, which is the fact that a lot of us, when we check our emails or our inbox first thing in the morning, we hold our breath as we read the first few emails, and the impact that can have on us emotionally. We talk about how to take on feedback at work without spiraling, and we talk about how to deal with confrontation with a family member, or how to go to bed angry with your partner. So I think we get really honest about, this is what is causing us anguish, and how can we talk about how to overcome it.
That's really interesting. And as soon as you said that about email apnea, I was like, oh my goodness, I do that. Um, but talking about the little things that make us spiral, and it seems like mindfulness is actually a really good way to avoid or not give into the spiraling.
Yeah, and I think really reframing what meditation or mindfulness or everything that people lump into that category is. So, my parents taught me to meditate when I was 17. So I've been talking about meditation for a decade, long before it's become this trendy thing that thankfully so many people do. But I think even now, like, there is an idea of what meditation looks like sitting on a cushion with your legs crossed and omming. And very much from the start, the producers, because I can err on the hippy dippy side a bit, and our producers are like, there's going to be no omming, no chanting, no crystals. We really want to package this up in the way that, your mum would understand and your boyfriend would understand, your kids would understand, like the tradie working on your house would understand, and everybody sees mindfulness as something that can help them. Whether it's, when you're feeling stressed and you're looking, one of the tips we always talk about is square breathing. Literally, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. Or, when you feel that anxious spiral, looking for 5 things you can see, 5 things you can hear, 5 things you can touch, 5 things you can smell. Like, very practical. But that's mindfulness, just as much as sitting and omming is mindfulness. This is all things that we can all do. And that's the message that we wanted to get across.
And what are some of the challenges in that and in creating the podcast?
Yeah. I think the time we have for each episode is both a blessing and can be a curse, because we wanted something that people can just put on in the car or as they're brushing their teeth or as they're making their breakfast and listen to very quickly. But of course, as a writer, I need to be able to explain a whole concept within a matter of minutes. So it's about kind of delivering all the information very impactfully, and getting everything across while still making it very short. And we have, we've been running it was our first birthday last week. So we've been running a year now. And we've started to kind of, I think, test our listeners a little bit more. So we're doing much more kind of guided meditations or, more traditional meditations now, whereas before we were just very practical. And now we're giving people the chance to actually go just a little bit deeper. We're just taking them just that little bit further into the mindfulness space. So I think it's, really opening the window to people of what mindfulness is, and then kind of pushing them just a little bit more and a little bit more to really pay attention to their mental health and emotional health, and kind of do the work to feel better without feeling like it's work, which is, the sweet spot we try to get right.
And you've done a lot of work, Amy, as a journalist to challenge mental health stigma. It'd be great to hear your thoughts about why mental health stigma is so pervasive and the ways that the podcast challenges it.
I think we've come so far. I grew up in a house where my mum suffered from depression and anxiety. I was widowed when I was very young, and my dad was paralyzed from cancer when I was a teenager. And so because I was forced to have kind of entered the mental health space and became very proactively in search of coping mechanisms very early on. And we've come so far. Now going to therapy, I think I don't believe in most circles there's a stigma around that. I think we kind of accept that, yes, you can go and talk to a counselor, and that doesn't mean that you are anything apart from someone who proactively wants to better their mental health. But I still think there's areas that we need to shine a light on. I still think there's kind of socially acceptable signs and symptoms of anxiety and other parts that people are scared to talk about. I think we've talked a lot about panic attacks in the show, because I know personally from my friendship group, from the people I interact with, the rates of particularly women who suffer from panic attacks and don't talk about it. We talk about issues around infertility and baby loss and infant loss. and how that impacts your friendship groups and the relationships that you have with friends who are mothers. Um, we talk about how to mindfully take antidepressants or medication for your mental health um, symptoms, which I think was really important for me um, to talk about, because we're not saying that mindfulness is the golden pill that's going to cure all your ailments and all your symptoms. We are saying it's something in your toolkit. And I think taking medication to help you to feel like the best version of yourself is something that probably still does carry a stigma in a way that therapy used to 10 years ago. So we're trying to break down that as well, and start honest conversations around those areas too.
That's, yeah, really interesting to hear that you do take such a broad perspective on things and have some difficult conversations.
Yeah, I think we talk about how do you mindfully take your medication, whether that's an ibuprofen or whatever you're doing. It's about coming back to gratitude, and it sounds cheesy to some, but it's about saying I'm privileged to have this medication at my disposal, and I'm making an empowered choice that I know it's the best thing for me. And so just running through that narrative when you take a pill every morning can really shift that mindset of like, I'm a failure, there's something wrong with me, into like, I'm taking a really positive step to better my life. So yeah, these are the conversations that we have within our team at Nova, because I'm very lucky that we are in a team who speak honestly about their own experiences. And our lived experiences are what inspires the show, and really guides the topics that we cover.
So on that, and you've been open about your own experiences with mental health in your journalism work and your books. What do you think the people with lived experience bring to the table when it comes to mental health services and projects like yours?
I think they just bring such a wealth of knowledge. I mean, I always, refer to experts, and we quote many, many experts in the show who work in fields of mental health. But also, I think there's nothing that really compares to speaking to someone who has been in that moment, who has felt what it feels like to be in the darkness, and who spent years, for instance, in my case, finding coping mechanisms that have really worked for them, and the unexpected coping mechanisms that there isn't any hard and fast evidence behind, but I know that this is what helps me on a daily basis, even though there's never been a peer-reviewed study on it. And having like trusting that matters, and that's worth sharing too. Like, I, as a journalist, specialize in storytelling for healing, which is about sharing your own lived experiences and the things that have pulled you down, and sharing how you pulled yourself out of it and learned to move forward with hope, that better days are coming. And I think that's what we all want, especially right now, is the hope that even if we don't feel great today, that doesn't mean we're going to feel like that forever. And I think it's so inspiring to hear from people who have faced incredible hardship and have now kind of finding their way to a new version of themselves and coming out the other side. So yeah, lived experiences are really, to me, absolute gold, hearing stories from other people.
And making a podcast is a kind of, shouting and hoping people can hear it. It's not a responsive type of media all the time. But can you tell us about times when you have seen the impact that the podcast has been having?
Yeah, I think we're really lucky that our readers are listeners are quite engaged. And so, we do get the messages from people saying, oh my gosh, I love your show. I listen to you twice a day. You keep me going. This is what you've helped me through. I think for me, I love it when it's someone that I just never thought would listen and they come up to me or send me a message. I've had husbands of friends come up to me, and, they're police officers, and they, the things they see are hideous on a daily basis. And, they're 6.5 foot tall, and I never would have expected them to be listening to a mindfulness program. And they're saying, this is what I got from the show. You're now my daily go-to when I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling stressed. You are where I go for guidance. So I think the surprising listeners are the best, always the best, the most heartwarming for me to think, you know, that's someone who would never have picked up a book on mindfulness or would never have gone into a yoga class or, signed up for a men's circle to learn about crystals and healing. But the way that we package the show and the way that we talk in the show has meant that mindfulness is something that they can now understand and relate to, and are using in their life. So that's always fantastic for us to hear.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you actually go about that, making mindfulness accessible. I think you say it's a mindfulness podcast for people who haven't thought about doing mindfulness before. What's your approach to that?
I try to think about my husband is honestly my greatest inspiration, because we could not be more of the opposite when we come to this world. So I come, like I said, I was brought up in a family where mindfulness was talked about, meditation was taught to us from a very young age, from when my dad was diagnosed with cancer. But my husband is a scientist and an atheist, so he is like the opposite to me. And so I think over the years of actually like trying to get him, when he's stressed, saying, why don't you try this breathing exercise? When he's anxious, saying, why don't we as a family talk about, like, when we put our kids to bed, we talk about the three things we're grateful for every night. And my kids go, elephants and our spa and going to the park or whatever it is. And like how I've tried to trick my husband into mindfulness techniques is really kind of how I come about the show. Okay, if someone has never stepped foot in a yoga class before, has never heard what a chakra is, and has no interest in finding out, how can I give them a practical tool they can do on the way to work when they're worried about that meeting, or they're nervous about that date, or they're dreading, their parent calling them. What can they do right now that's going to give them a bit of relief? And there are times where I go a little bit too woo-woo in my language, and that's where we have the brilliant team behind us, and my producer will message me and go like, rein it in. So we have a great team, and I think that's where it's great not to just work on your own, to make sure the language is super accessible, and really literally anyone of any age group could pretty much listen to our episodes. We do special ones for kids every now and again, which is something that I love to do because I have 3 small babies, and yeah, really checking our language, checking our tone, and making sure that it's something that everybody can understand.
And I like what you said there about a toolkit, giving people a lot of tools, and they might not use the tools from every episode, but there are things that they can call on.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, we put out so much content. Of course, it won't all resonate with everybody. We've got mindfulness tips for when you're preparing for a date versus, when you're preparing for childbirth. So, we really do try and cover a wide demographic, and the challenges that we're all facing. But yeah, it's definitely for me, because I write so much of the content, I am in a space where I'm like a working mother with young kids. So I also have to like step outside myself and go, okay, what's the rest of the world doing outside this parenting bubble with the stresses that I'm facing? Like, what is my youngest sister-in-law doing? What is my single friend doing? What is my parents doing? What are small business owners going through in COVID? So really just kind of trying to tick all those boxes of the everyday struggles that we're all facing right now. And I mean, COVID made it easier in a sense because there were some common things that we were all feeling. We did a lot around Zoom fatigue. We did a lot about being cut off from your family and members and friends, re-emerging into society now. We also have, our listeners live across the world. So we're also trying to look at things from a global perspective, which has been tricky in COVID because we went into lockdown as England came out of lockdown, and, they're traveling and we are still very much living in Australia only. So again, trying to cover all the bases as well of the different experiences people are having across the world right now.
it's incredible the amount of work that's gone into the podcast. I mean, the number of episodes alone, but that each one is so thought out and carefully crafted. It'd be great to finish up just hearing a bit about what the award means to you and the team from the space.
Mhm. I think it just gave us so much confidence that we are hitting the right note, because of course, you know, we know that our listeners love it, but it's really important for us to be accurate and knowledgeable and informed. You know, we really put a lot of effort into researching and looking at the science behind what we're sharing as well. And so I think for you guys to say you're doing a great job really gives us the faith that, you know, we are also producing really accurate and educational information as well as entertaining information, and that's what we really try to do. We're not here just to be like, oh, think yourself happy and that'll everything will be okay. We really want to be honest about, you know, the struggles we face and the practical tools that which can help you overcome it. So it really meant everything to us that you gave us the thumbs up, and for the next 500 odd episodes it will really keep us going.
Thank you so much for chatting with us today. Massive congratulations, not only for the award, but for the incredible work that you're doing. If you would like to learn more about the Space podcast or listen to it, any one of the previous 560 episodes or any of the future 560, you can find links in the chat and comments. Tune in tomorrow. We'll be talking with the winner of the Leadership Through Lived Experience Award, John Harper. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.